for a reason, and it meant something. So Hillel reasoned, since it said for a cause of sexual immorality, then there must be another cause, since the word cause is there. And since he didn't say what the cause was, it probably meant any cause. So Hillel's school said Deuteronomy 24 meant that a man could divorce his wife for two reasons: sexual immorality or any cause. Now, Hillel was a man. The rabbis in his school were men. They decided that the any cause divorce would only be available to one gender. Anybody want to guess which gender it was that could get the any cause divorce? The men. Any cause, Hillel said, covered just about any fault you could conceive of. Again, the rabbi said, well, we need to write down what it is you can get a divorce for. They listed things like this. If a wife spoiled her husband's dinner, he could divorce her. If she walked around with her hair unbound, her husband could divorce her because that was considered improper. Ladies, those of you who like to scream, if she argued in a voice loud enough to be heard in the next house, he could divorce her. Now, one drawback to the any cause divorce was that it was more expensive. You see, if the husband could prove that a spouse had committed adultery or abuse in court, then the husband would not have to pay what was called a ketaba, which was a marriage inheritance that you had promised at the time you got married. If you got an any cause divorce, then you had to pay this marriage inheritance back to her family. So it was more expensive. Hillel is saying, now there is a new divorce option available. It's never been available in the history of Israel before, and it is the any cause divorce available to any husband. So you might imagine this very quickly became the most popular form of divorce in Israel. If you had the money to pay what was promised to the family at the time of the marriage, you could just get out of the marriage for any cause if you were a man. Now, although you don't know it, many of you have read about an any cause divorce in the Bible that was considered. You remember the story in the New Testament when Joseph finds out that Mary is pregnant. In Matthew 1:19 it says, because Joseph did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce Mary quietly. This word quietly is not just an adjective. It's a technical term in Greek. What Joseph decided was he wasn't going to take Mary to court and prove she was guilty of adultery, which would have let him off having to pay the marriage inheritance promise back to her family. He decided to get an any cause divorce, which meant he still would have had to financially support the baby Jesus because it was still going to be thought to be his child. But there would have been no proof, no scandal. Now, this any cause divorce is what Joseph was thinking about. It was an innovation, like I said, of Hillel. Now, one of the things I want you to see from what Hillel did is it is possible to find things in the Bible that never were put there by God. When somebody come up to you with some new teaching of something that nobody else knows about, it is probably wrong. Now, the other important rabbi at that time was Shammai. And Shammai disagreed. He said, no, Deuteronomy only refers to divorce being allowed for sexual immorality. Now, of course, Shammai would have agreed with the conditions under Exodus 21 because nobody was arguing about that passage. They were only arguing about this any cause in Deuteronomy chapter 24. So that's what the controversy is around. Shammai is saying, listen, when it comes to Deuteronomy 24:1, and any cause divorce is wrong. It's a bad interpretation of the text. It's just not there. So you've got this battle raging between the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai. Hillel says you can get a divorce for sexual immorality and anything else you can think of. Shammai says, no, you can only get a divorce for sexual immorality and those three things covered under Exodus 21 concerning support and love and taking care of this person. So in Jesus' day, you still got this big debate going on. And if you were a rabbi or a teacher, the first thing they want to know about you is, are you a Hillel guy or are you a Shammai guy? In the same way we ask politicians, are you for capital punishment? Are you against it? Are you pro-life? Are you pro-choice? So we want to know those kinds of things. Now, in this passage of Scripture that we read, it said, some Pharisees came to Jesus to test or to trap him. They asked him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any cause? Now, many people read this verse and they think they're asking Jesus the question, can you get a divorce? That's not what they're asking Jesus. Everybody knows you can get a divorce because you got Deuteronomy and you've got Numbers. This is not what is being asked. Now, the passage was introduced saying they were trying to trap Jesus. They're trying to test him. There is something, they've got another scheme. They could care less what Jesus' position is on divorce. If I asked you, are you pro-choice or pro-life, what am I talking about? Abortion. I don't even have to say the word abortion. If I say I'm going to talk about pro-life and pro-choice, all of you know I'm going to say something about abortion because that's where 20th century America is. The same thing when you heard in the first century heard somebody say any cause and divorce, you immediately knew they were referring to, are you Hillel or are you Shammai? It was just natural. They knew that's what you were talking about. So what they are asking Jesus in this chapter is not, can you get a divorce or not? They are asking, are you a Hillel guy or are you a Shammai guy? How many of you think Jesus is going to be a Hillel guy? How many of you think Jesus is going to be a Shammai guy? Y'all about as scared or as asleep as the first service was. You only got two options, Hillel or Shammai. How many of you think he's a Hillel guy? How many of you think he's a Shammai guy? Okay. And the rest of y'all, whoever's next to him, slap him and wake him up. Okay. They came to trap Jesus. Let me give you a little historical background to what is going on here. Do you remember who is in charge of Galilee when Jesus is alive? A guy by the name of Herod. Herod was married. Herod fell in love with his brother's wife. Herod divorced his wife and got his brother's wife to divorce his brother so that they could get married. Herod's divorce was an any cause divorce. You remember a fellow by the name of John the Baptist? Do you remember he had the nerve to tell Herod, it is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife? Do you remember what happened to him for saying that? He got his head cut off. With Jesus, the Pharisees, do you think they thought he was a Hillel guy or a Shammai guy? What was John the Baptist? John the Baptist was a Shammai guy and he got his head cut off. So, if the Pharisees can get Jesus to make the